Shalom, welcome to a memorial shiur of my dear nephew, Justin Zemser, Efraim Yakov, the son of Chaim, Tzvi, Halevy, the only child of this dear sister. 7 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, 7 years now. My nephew, after making his first and only trip to Israel, and on a collegiate birthright trip of the Navy college that he was enrolled in, he started getting a connection to Judaism, learning a chavruta on the phone, which he didn't make me aware of. And he came to Israel on this collegiate trip for 10 days. He met our dear family, a lot of cousins and children of cousins. And he was a brilliant boy. He was finishing his second year to be an engineer, to be accepted into the unit of the U.S. Navy called the SEALs unit. And he had a 4.0 index in his first 2 years in college. He was very full of kindness, full of giving to any and everyone, minorities and everyone. He was well loved. He was a tremendous athlete, I understand. He was a tremendous athlete in baseball and other things as well. And we had intention that we would start some sort of study on the phone once in a while. And on the 24th of VR, he was finishing school that week or something, and he got on an Amtrak train that was, which city is it? You told me Navy College?
Annapolis.
Yeah.
Annapolis.
Leaving from Annapolis, which is Maryland,
Mm-hmm.
Maryland, en route to New York, and in Philadelphia, the train conductor went too fast around a bend, derailed, and several people died in that tragic incident. Justin was one of them. That was on a Thursday. My sister called me up crying, of course. And I made a decision that I'm going to go fly to New York for the first time in, I don't know, a decade or so. And I arrived 6 in the morning, and the funeral was like at 10 in the morning in the 5 towns of New York. And I was amazed to see the throngs, the hundreds and hundreds of people that came, people that didn't know him from university, of course, and the Jewish world in the 5 towns heard that a young Jewish man lost his life, and it was hundreds and hundreds of people inside. There was not enough room. People were standing. I delivered a eulogy there, together with the Navy rabbi or chaplain, whatever we call him, of the Navy. And then he had a special burial in a Jewish cemetery, thank God. As you can see here in some of these pictures, you can share it around. So to my dear sister and brother-in-law, may they know that the words of Torah that we're saying today may be an uplifting of Justin's soul in the Gan Eden. May his neshama be bound in the bound of life and eternity by the Holy One, blessed be He. And today we're going to discuss the Levium. He was a Levi. I hardly even knew that his father's a Levi. He was a Levi. So we're going to be discussing, we know that there are 3 countings, major countings here in our Parsha, Yisrael, Levium, and the Bechorim. We're beginning from chapter 3 today, Perek Gimel. After studying the 4 camps of Israel, and that the 4 camps of Israel are surrounding the Shekhinah, the Machane Shekhinah, you're welcome to have, the camp of the divine presence. That's how Am Yisrael lives its life. Its order is a divine order. Even the way it's camping in the desert, it will be in and around Hashem's encampment. And now we come after the counting, after the counting of the individuals of Israel, and also the counting of the the camps of Israel, 4 machanot, and how they're going to travel in order, we come to Perek Gimel, chapter 3, the book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers. Ve'ele, and these, Toledot Aronu Moshe, Biyom Diber Adonai et Moshe Bar Sinai. Well, it says Har Sinai here, where we opened up the book of Bamidbar with the term Midbar Sinai, unlike here Har Sinai. And we're asking, why is that important to mention, or the difference? Number 2, Toldot Aronu Moshe. Why? What do we have to know? Who was the family of Aaron and Moshe? And now let's begin reading. Pasuk Bet, verse 2. Ve'ele Shemot Bnei Aaron. And now the Torah gives us the names of Aaron's boys. Habechor Nadav, Vaviu Elazar Vitamar. Some total of 4 boys. And then Eile Shemot Bnei Aaron Akonam Mishuchim. Okay, these are the names of the children of Aaron, that they are anointed, priests that are anointed according to divine order. This is the way they're going to be serving. Asher milei adam lechahen. Okay, their hands were filled in order to serve. In other words, they were given responsibility. They went through the process of miluim that we already studied in Chumash Vayikra. And what happened to 2 of the 4 sons? Vayamot Nadav Vavihu lifnei Adonai, bakrivam eish zara lifnei Adonai b'midbar Sinai, uvanim lo hayu lahem, vayichahen Elazar v'itamar al pnei Aaron avihem. I'm asking myself, what's the significance, Aleph, of telling me the children, Aaron and Moshe, now at the beginning of the chapter? Furthermore, the Torah doesn't really tell us the kids or the names of the kids of
Aaron?
No, Aaron are mentioned. Moshe's kids are not mentioned. Yeah, the Rishonim are asking that question. And of course, the Talmud says, and Rashi brings at the beginning of the chapter, that when you teach any children that do not belong to you, you become the spiritual father. Become the spiritual father. And Moshe, of course, taught all the kids of his brother. He taught all his nephews. And therefore, the kids of Aaron are considered like the kids of Moshe. That's the equation Rashi brings in the name of the Talmud, Masechet Sanhedrin, page 19. But I'm still in a cloud, not understanding why the opening of this chapter and telling us about Aaron and Moshe. Maybe if we read the next segment, we'll begin to understand a little more. But notice that it opened up with Har Sinai, and not what? Midbar Sinai. Let's keep on reading, and when we get to Pasuk Yud Daled, let's see a contrast, and maybe we'll be able to explain. We're going on, further reading, verse 5 and on. Okay? Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, hakrevet mate Levi. Bring the tribe of Levi closer. In order, hakrev, imperative. V'amadeta oto, stand them up, lifnei Aaron HaKohen, v'shertu oto. Aaron's is now going to be served by the tribe of Levi. The center or focal point of Mishkan activity will be the Kohanim. Aaron represents the Kohanim. And who will be the servants? Of course, noble servants, noble workers of the tribe of Levi. Shertuoto, sherut. Service here is a noble word that's used, lisharet. Okay? If you're a public servant, okay, and you're doing your sherut, you're misharet, you're serving, not in a negative connotation, but rather a positive connotation. What is the sherut? Let's keep on reading verse 7. V'shamiru et mishmarto. And they shall keep the mishmeret of him. Okay? Which mishmeret? Maybe the shmeret of the Mishkan. Let's see. Vet mishmeret kol ha'edah. The mishmeret of the entire community. Where? Lifnei ol moed. To do what? Lavod et avodat mishkan. So it seems that the Leviim will be doing a mishmeret, which we have to define. We'll do it in a moment. And it's really a service for the entire Eidah, the entire nation. Where? We know where it is, in the Mishkan area here called the Ol Moed. What is it in detail? Pasuk Chet, we'll get back to the term Mishmeret in a moment. V'shamru et kol kalei Ol Moed. Here we have a specification. Who's in charge of stocking all the vessels, maintaining them, making sure, inventory. Do we have enough for wear and tear? The Levium, all the kelim, the vessels of Omoy. Furthermore, Mishmeret B'nai Yisrael, whatever Mishmeret, the needs are for B'nai Yisrael, for their needs in the Beit HaMikdash. Ashalom, my name is Menachem, the Israelite. I want to bring a korban today. Would you please show me where I can purchase here on the Temple Mount? So the Levium takes you to this area. You exchange monies. The monies become holy. You get a korban. Or I want to bring a meal offering. Where can I buy the proper flour here in the Beit HaMikdash? So that's going to be done, administered by the Levium, whatever the needs of Bnei Yisrael. La'avod et avodat hamikdash. However, we still have yet to explain the word mishmarto. Clearly, the root of the word mishmer, what are the three root letters? Shin, mem, resh. Okay? Shin, mem, resh, a verb, lishmor, to guard, to protect. But look how Rashi explains the term mishmarto. Everyone see Rashi, Pasuk 7, down below. Verse 7, Vishamut Mishmarto. Rashi categorizes for us what it is. Kol minoi, every appointment. Shehadam mimune alav, that a person is appointed upon. Umutal alav, and imposed upon. La'asoto, you received an appointment, you received a function, a mission to do. What is it called? Karuim, Mishmeret. B'chol mikra uvelashon mishnah. It's categorized or called a mishmeret. So again, you're appointed to do a function, to do a role, and you have to do it. So that appointment, when you're doing it, is called a mishmeret. Okay, we often, in the army, in the hospital, I'm on mishmeret right now. I'm on duty right now. Okay, I have a function. I'm appointed. I'm doing a mishmeret. I'm doing this function, and I was appointed to do so. So you have a mishmeret from 7 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon, from here to there. It's called mishmeret. So it's not necessarily guard duty. It's performing your duty. Thank you. And it's interesting that the same language is equally used in the Chumash and the Mishnah. Even though we'll see different places, the Torah will say, and the Gemara brings it, Lashon Mikra Lechud, Lashon Chachamim Lechud. For instance, a tree. In the language of Bereshit, in creation, what is a tree used? Which word is the word for the making or the creation of a tree?
You plant a seed?
No, in the Torah. What language does God use in the Torah for a tree, in Bereshit, as opposed to what Chachamim use? So we have eitz and we have ilan. What does the Torah use? In Bereshit. It uses ilan or eitz? I'm thinking, I'm double quick. Huh? What does it say in the beginning of Bereshit? It says eitz. But when the Mishnah in Perek, the Mishnah Mesechet Brachot, in the later chapters, in chapters 6 and on, yes? The Mishnah Mesechet Brachot, there it talks about Al Perot HaIlan. There's a different style that Chazal used, and that's used in the Mishnah, as opposed to the style that the Ribono Shel Olam used inside the scripture itself. So often, there's a difference in language, okay? And here, though, the word mishmeret is equally used in the Torah, Rashi says, and in the Mishnah. That's the point I wanted to bring to your attention. Any questions or comments? Then let's go on, please. Pasuk Tet, verse 9. V'natatai talavim. You're going to give, you're going to appoint, you're going to deliver et haLeviim li Aaron ulvanav. They're going to be delivered to them, to Aaron and his kids. For what? Nitunim, the word is doubled up. They're definitely given there. Meaning, maybe forever. The emphasis, nitunim. Hema, a poetic word, instead of just writing haim, which means they. Haim, they. Hema lo, they're for him. For who? For Aaron. That's their life. The Levim are here to serve Kohen Gadol and the other Kohanim. And they are from who? Me'et B'nai Yisrael. Don't forget it. The Levim are not a private company representing themselves. Rather, they're representing Bnei Yisrael. They're coming from Bnei Yisrael. They're the members of Bnei Yisrael, even though they're Leviim, serving the Kohanim. Furthermore, Pasuk Yud, Vet Aaron vet banav tifkod. What does that mean? Does that mean to count? No. Tifkod here doesn't mean counting. Vet Aaron vet banav tifkod, meaning appoint. V'shamru et kunatam. They must keep their job as Kohanim. Vazar hakarev yumat. The Leviim, as we learned, will be protecting the area of the Mishkan. They must make sure that no one is going to walk into the sensitive places of the Mishkan. And Azar, which we explained yesterday, is a stranger. And in this case, a non-Kohen, very good. If he goes into these certain areas, yumat. Now, I don't think that the Maral of Prague explains yumat here doesn't mean bzz, that he's zapped and he's automatically killed. Rather, it could happen that this terrible punishment will come. It's not an immediate, the Maral says, it's not an immediate reaction by God, that someone that's not supposed to be walking in here is going to die right away. No. But it'll be a potential punishment, which of course should act as a deterrent to us not to going on to those areas. And today, we know there's a group of God-fearing Jews that they're not in the majority, but are in favor of walking upon the Temple Mount and so on and so forth. And there are some rabbis, some great rabbis that are posek like that, but of course the majority of the rabbis are asking us to be more careful, not walk upon there, even though you may have studied it, or this or that. Be very careful. We're playing with fire almost, because if we go to the wrong places, and of course we don't have the ability today, maybe tomorrow, of having the Efer Paraduma, we cannot purify ourselves. We don't have the ashes of the red heifer, so we're all defiled to the dead. If you're not, now you are. I just touched you. Okay?
There's no temple, then how?
When we have the temple, we will have the ashes of the red heifer, and you, as an Israelite, will walk upon the Temple Mount, coming close to the area where the Kohanim are, to deliver your personal korbanot. You'll be able to do that once we have the temple and the ashes of the red heifer. But I didn't hear your question, though. What was your question?
You said that you can't walk there because we're impure.
We are impure now. We're all tameh, impure to the dead. There are certain places that you're allowed to walk on, but our great rabbi said, don't even go there, lest you may go to the place we were not supposed to walk on. Okay? I remember one of my sons was gung ho. I want to go to the Temple Mount. He was in, young kids are, they're very ecstatic and they're very sometimes extreme. Their worlds are very black and white. And why can't we? He said, don't do it. And then he was pressing too much. Then we decided that, well, if you want to do it, we're going to send you to a course to a great rabbi to study. He went to where the great synagogue used to be on King George Street, Karana Yesod. That's where the house or the office of the chief rabbi. And there was a course there once a week for, 4 weeks or something. He went to a great rabbi, he went to the course, and then he went up to the Temple Mount a few times, this and that. We said, if you're already going to do it, you have to know what you're doing. You have to know what you're doing. Now that he's married, he's calmed down already. He doesn't go up to the Temple Mount.
I have some Jews who go up to the Temple Mount. There's courses that they take. Yeah. They teach them how to pretend to be a Muslim.
That's something else. We're not interested in that. Pasuk Yud Aleph, we're going on, gentlemen. And now you may see that this is a new separate segment. There's a break to the end of the line. You probably in your printed Chumash have the letter Pei, Patuach. It's open, but for those that have, like David has, or you have Matanya, the entire line is skipped. And now we have a separate segment. Please look inside in chapter 3. Verses Yud Aleph, Yud Bet, Yud Gimel, verses 11, 12, and 13. I'm reading. Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. Va'ani. God says, and I. Hine lakachti et halvim. I've taken the Leviim. From where? Mitoch b'nei Yisrael. Like we said before, they're representing the Jewish people. They were amongst the b'nei Yisrael. Tachat, instead of, kol bechor peterechem. Kol bechor. They are instead of the bechor, the firstborn. The firstborn is defined as a peterechem. Look at me. Peter is liftoach, the opening, the one that opened the womb. The womb. In other words, what we call regular or natural childbirth, and not what we call, what is it called, C-section? Is that what it's called? Caesarean operation, where the stomach is opened up and for medical reasons, the baby is taken out of that area. That's not called Peter Rechem. We see the term elsewhere when we learn about the Bechor in the book of Shemot after Yetziat Mitzrayim. So now God says, I've taken the Levium in lieu of the Bechor, Mi B'nai Yisrael, Vayu Li Avim, and now the Levium are there. In other words, the initial plan of God was, let's now read it, beautiful, Pasuk Yud Gimel verse 3, Ki, because, or that, Li, for me, called Bechor. Every Bechor was for me. What do you mean for me? What do you mean for me? What does God mean?
For his service.
For his service. Special for me. Very good. Called Bechor was special for me. When? When did God make this decision? As if? Biyom, on the day, Hakoti Chol Bechor Be'eretz Mitzrayim. The same day that God smashed, hit every Bechor in the land of Mitzrayim. Well, God did that. Let's add what's not written here. Who did God kill? And what calendar date was it, gentlemen?
Firstborn of
The 15th of Nisan. At what time of day? Midnight. Okay, your clock's working very well. At midnight, all over the country of Mitzrayim, every Bechor was killed? Non-Jews except Paro and except the Jewish people. In other words, what was hovering over the entire land was a death horror to kill each and every Bechor. And for that God said, I don't want you that night to leave the house. Which house? The house that they were congregated together and eating the meat of the Korban Pesach. That night. Okay? Na'alechem beraglechem. Your shoes are on your feet. Makelchem beyadchem. Your staffs are in your hands. Va'achaltem oto b'chipazon. You're going to eat. You're going to eat it with quickly. With what? Haste. Thank you. Happily. Haphazardly. What does that mean in English?
You got some sauce on your shirt.
Thank you. Really? Haphazardly? B'chipazon means hastily, quickly, swiftly, getting ready for the instructions, which will come the following morning. So that night, death came upon the land of Egypt. And whose lives were saved? In particular, the Bechorim of the Jewish people, their lives were saved. By God discerning between the Bechorim of Am Yisrael and the Bechorim of the Goyim, the nations there, predominantly Egypt, who became special? That's the next words exactly, gentlemen. Higdashti, do you see it? Higdashti li chol bechor b'Yisrael me'adam ad behema li yiyu ani Adonai. The sanctification process, my dear friends, when we deal with Kedusha, okay? When we deal with Kedusha, we mean there's something that is nivdal, something which is miyuchad. Okay? Kedusha is something separated. Here we see this term at its best, that God separated, He made a havdalah by saving the lives of each and every Bechor that was born to these these Hebrew families. By the way, remember, until Har Sinai, you becoming a Hebrew is dependent upon your Abba. From Har Sinai, the Ima, that's right. So, on the day that I plagued the Bechorim of the Egyptian people, Eretz Mitzrayim, I sanctified in the same process the Bechorim of the Jewish people. Bechor, Bet Chafresh, the first. What is first in Judaism is unique, is special, has holiness. We see this in many realms in our Jewish lives. And therefore, the specialty of the Jewish people, God considers all of the Jewish people, when He talks to Moshe in His first revelation at the burning bush, God says to Moshe the following three words: You are Beni, Bechori, Yisrael. On a macro level, all of the nation of Israel is what? Is a Bechor. Even though we're not biologically born as the firstborn. But on a macro sense, all of Am Yisrael is considered a Bechor. Vis-a-vis who? The nations of the world. And that's what it means, Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Amim. So we have a macro level, we have a micro level. On a macro level, the revelation to Moshe Rabbeinu, when he's tending to the sheep of his father-in-law Yitro, and he's alone, and he's so lofty and he's so special, being so careful in the wilderness that God forbid he shouldn't take of any property that's owned by someone else, and therefore he purposely took the sheep out to Hefker, ownerless property, and he's there alone with God, and he was a go-getter, he was an idealist. When he saw a fellow Hebrew being exploited or being hit by an Egyptian, he looked here, he looked there. When the coast was clear, boom! He TK, as Rabbi Gon would say, he TK, what was it called? TKO'd that Egyptian, and then quick burial in the sand. Moshe Rabbeinu was an activist. He couldn't sit idle. He cared so much for his nation. And when he saw two Hebrews verbally feuding one another, and he saw that there was no compromise, he butted in. Not like what they tell you in New York, don't butt in and keep your nose out of matters. I'm part of Klal Yisrael. These are my brothers. So Moshe Rabbeinu was so klali. He deserves this coordination with God, this revelation with God, and God reveals himself in different stages as Rabbeinu Bechei, one of the great Rishonim. First he sees something unusual. He sees a bush with fire, and the bush is not being consumed. He gets closer, and he sees that it's in the heart. And then he gets a voice from a malach. And then he gets another level where God is speaking and revealing himself to him, not the angel. And there, God says, you're going to be Beni Bechori Yisrael. Your entire nation, from that understanding, is like a Bechor. What's first is unique, is Nivdal. What's first has Kedusha, uniqueness, holiness. There's a spiritual DNA inside you that you cannot take a segment out of the body and investigate it under the lens of a microscope. You just can't do it. It's not visible. It belongs to the absolute. It belongs to the spiritual. It's a spiritual dimension. And therefore, the great event on the night of the 15th, like you said, at midnight, God does two things at the same time, what usually human beings cannot do. The Bechorim of the worlds living in Mitzrayim, the world nations, are dying, they're dead, and God is sanctifying the Bechor. From then, who is earmarked to be unique, to be special, to be doing the holy service? The Bechorim, the firstborn, they're earmarked to do it. So why are they being exchanged? Earmarked? Designated. Okay? Why are they being exchanged? What's the reason?
The Korah.
No.
And that's because they all took part on the sin of the Hetega.
Beautiful. He's learned it twice before.
Yeah, I read before. Yeah,
it's a bestseller, the Torah. So since the Leviim did not take part, as opposed to the Bechorim that did take part in the sin of Chet Egel, they're exchanged. And now, in this chapter, we're learning about the exchange. We're learning that from now. What's the calendar date of this book, of this Chumash?
2 years later?
The second year of Yetziat Mitzrayim, meaning a year after we came out of Mitzrayim. In which month?
First of the year.
The first of Iyar. That's right, that's how the book opened up with. The first of Iyar. And we're 20 days or less already to our first movement towards Eretz Yisrael. And God says, I'm going to explain to you right now that right now we're exchanging the Levium. And it's an exchange process, not on the New York Stock Exchange where you exchange commodities for this or for that. But here we're going to have to talk about, well, we have a problem. We're going to have to deal with this right now in this shiur. The Bechorim were sanctified, it says. And the Levium are not sanctified. Well, What is that process called in the Torah? Taking out Kedusha, putting in Kedusha. What is that called?
Transfer.
Right, and in the language of the text, what is it called? Starts with the letter Pei?
Pikut. Pikut.
No.
No.
Mazal Tov. You had a baby boy. Ah, Yofi.
Pidyon.
A pidyon.
What I had.
Right. Okay. Hirsch had a pidyon ben here. Not at the age of 30 days, but a little later, thank God, we realized his situation. So we're going to have to understand the occurrence in this parsha of a pidyon, namely to take out the kedusha from the Bechorim and insert the kedusha to those in place of them, the Levi'im. And now this brings us to Pasuk Yudalid, the next segment. Again, we see in one perek a formation of what we call parshiot, separate segments that are, if you see in his chumash, you can't see it in yours, the rest of the line is skipped. Can you please show it to your neighbor that doesn't have it? See, the rest of the line is skipped. The scribe, the sofer, will skip to the rest of the line. In your printed chumashim, you have the letter Pei, right? Patuach. Which represents Patuach. So you all see it? Any questions? Yes.
We learned like on the Korbanot earlier, like just that something that was sanctified, you can't take away its sanctity, right? Like you can't switch the Korban, you can't switch the Zeh.
You're talking now in the end of Chumash Vayikra regarding the laws of Tmura. Lo Yamir Behema. The Torah says you cannot exchange an animal. Oh, I dedicated this animal. Wow. Next I found something. Wow, that's a better, fatter animal. I like to give that one. Lo Yamir. Lo Yachlifenu, the Torah uses the language. You cannot exchange. You're right. In a korban that was already sanctified, you have to bring it. Here we're not talking about a korban, we're talking about people. And just like a 30-day-old infant is so holy because he's first. Remember, we said whatever is first belongs to godliness, belongs to spirituality, has this level of kedusha. Well, do you want your baby or not? Do you want to have your own baby, or you want to leave it all? You're not a Kohen, you're not a Levi, right? Remember, a father, Kohen, a father, Levi, has a Bechor, he is exempt of this mitzvah called Pidyon. We, Yisraelim, non-Kohanim and Leviim, we must do the act. So we're not talking about an animal. The Torah says, I want you, if you want to be the father of this child, take out the Kedusha. Whew, let his feet land on the ground. Let him be a regular Israelite and not a holiness that belongs to the Kuna. Otherwise, he can't function. He's so holy. He won't be able to function. So the Torah wants you to do the pidyon purposely. But if it was an animal, you're right. There's a prohibition called lo yamir. You shall not exchange, lo yamir, or lo yachlifenu. And if you do, the Torah says, quote, Vayahu utmurato yakodesh. That one that was initially sanctified and the one you wanted to exchange, you lost. They're both holy. You're going to have to bring both of them as korbanot. Very nice laws at the end of Chumash Vayikra. Now we come to verse 14 and 15. Stop me at the end of verse 14 in chapter 3 here and ask a question. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe Bamidbar Sinai lemor.
Was now again
As opposed to?
Before it was Har.
Very good. So that we mentioned before. Very good, David and Ariel. Go back to the beginning of the chapter. Ve'ele toldot Aaron Moshe b'yom diber Hashem et Moshe behar Sinai. And now, this upcoming commandment, the Torah states Bamidbar Sinai. And what is the opening mitzvah of this section in Pasuk Tedvav, verse 15? Everyone tell me. Read ahead. Pikot. Don't give me this English business. Pikot at who? At Bnei Levi. So there's now a mitzvah to count the children of Levi. Look at me. Was this commandment issued at Har Sinai? What do we mean that you're saying it wasn't issued at Har Sinai? Har Sinai, that great event, was how long ago, approximately? We opened up our shur at the beginning of the week. We had a timeline. How long ago was Har Sinai?
About 11 months.
We're now in Iyar. The revelation of God was in Sivan. So we're 11 to 12 months to that revelation. Was there then a mitzvah to count B'nai Levi?
No.
Why not?
No.
Prove from. Give me a logic. Why not?
For the Chet HaEgel.
Very nice. Very nice. I'm reading a Ramban, which is not in front of you. You're going to have to rely on my Hebrew reading. Hopefully, you'll correct me if I make mistakes. So bear with me. Try to concentrate. I'm reading with you together, gentlemen, a Ramban. The Ramban says the question that all of you asked beautifully. Why does it state here? Midbar Sinai, as opposed to the beginning of the parak where it stated Har Sinai. Ba'avur, on behalf Shizkir Biyom Diber Hashem and Moshe Behar Sinai, because the Torah mentioned the beginning of the chapter Har Sinai, Chazar ve'amar, the Torah repeated and said, Ki lo hayta tzava'at ha'pkida shel halvim behar Sinai. This pekida, the mitzvah to count, did not happen at Mount Sinai. Why? Ki b'chirat toldot b'nei Aaron levadam hayta behar Sinai b'yom tzavato maseh mishkan. The choice of b'nei Aaron, only them, was at Mount Sinai to build the Mishkan. But who was not appointed then to be the workers in the Mishkan? Who was not appointed then? The Leviim. Aval ha-Leviim lo nitztava b'chiratam behar Sinai. They were not commanded at Har Sinai. When we're saying Har Sinai, we mean, and we explained this also, the opening of Chumash Bamidbar. Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe Bamidbar Sinai. And we said the Rashbam was the one that brought it. Yeah, the Rashbam was the one that said, as long as the Mishkan was yet to be built and God's presence was yet to be revealed in the Mishkan, the place that we're camping is called? Again, as long as the Mishkan was yet to be built and God's presence is yet to be in that abode, the area of our camping is called? But once the Mishkan, the tabernacle was built and God's presence is in the Mishkan, that place of encampment is called? Exactly. That's what the Rashbam said at the beginning of the chapter. The Ramban apparently agrees with him, with the Rashbam, the grandson of Rashi, and therefore says the Leviim were not commanded in their choice at Mount Sinai, just in Midbar Sinai. When? Bi-ohel moed. After, like you said, David, after the sin of Chet HaEgel. Okay. Shall we continue, gentlemen? Let's go. Pekodet b'nei Levi leveit avotam limishpichotam, according to their fathers' families. Kol zachar miben, next word. What? Miben chodesh v'mala tifkedei? Excusez-moi. What did we learn formally in the counting of Yisrael? Miben? 20 shana, 20 years old. And here, you're going to count the babies that are 30 days. And our question, of course, is, why? So let's now, follow-up question to what Asher is saying. Why is a pidyon aben done specifically from 30 days and on? Why isn't it done same day of the Brit Milah, a week after the Brit Milah?
Is that the amount of time between Matan Torah and Lepim?
No.
Something
What does 30 days of an infant's growth have to do with Pidyon Aben? What? What do you mean? Very nice. We, right, until modern day medicine, there was a lot of infant death. Crib death, is it called in English? Is it called crib death?
To make sure they don't die.
Infant mortality. I'm sure hundreds of years ago must have been much, much higher than it is in the last century or so with the development of modern day medicine. During Chazal as well, as long as the baby did not reach the growth of 30 days, it was called, and Rashi brings it in Pasuk 15, he's called a nefel, from the word nafal. It'll fall, it will die. Therefore, once it's as if it's not alive. And there are certain laws of avelut, lo elen, we should never know, of an infant's death under 30 days, that there's not even a type of avelut if it's not mourning if it's not 30 days. So, this is oral Torah, but we see a basis of it in the mitzvah of Pidyon Ben, and now similarly so in the counting of the Levium. Okay? So, miben chodesh, the baby is considered chai, living, and not considered a nefel. Yet, we have not answered the question, why count B'nai Levi from the day of, and not the days of 20 years old. Okay? Let's keep on reading. Any questions? Shall we continue? Vayifkod otam Moshe, pasuk 16, please follow. Vayifkod otam Moshe al pi Adonai, kasher tzuva. Moshe doesn't play around. He doesn't go to the bowling alley or the golf course, take a break. He goes right away. Vayifkod otam al pi Hashem, kasher tzuva. We learned also about this at the beginning of the parak. Here's represented or reflected the attribute of zrizut, alacrity, quickness. He's zariz lekayem mitzvot. He does not procrastinate, doesn't think about, take a vacation. No. Pasuk Yud Zayin. Vayu Eilev and Levi b'shmotam Gershon ukatu Merari. How many children does Levi have?
3.
Where were they born?
Gershon.
Where were they born?
No.
No. In the Yitrus.
They went down to Mitzrayim when Yakov Avin, when the Ra'av, the hunger was so difficult. They were the ones that went down to Mitzrayim, and their families developed in Mitzrayim. Look at me. The names of the 3 sons of Levi Asher.
Gershon, Kahat, and Merari.
Is it Gershom, like the doctor that you know?
No, Gershon.
Gershon. Don't be this too Ashkenazi. Gershon. One more time.
Gershon.
There you go. Very good. So, tell me, why is it in this order? What do you think, Moshe?
I'm assuming Gershon is the Bachor.
Right. So it's probably written in chronological order, and therefore Gershon is mentioned first. And then we're told about the kids of Gershon. How many kids does he have?
2.
And they're called Livni and Shimei. Again, Asher?
Shimei.
There you go. And David, tell me the names of Kehat's children. Come on, this next of it.
Which of me? No, you.
I don't like you doing that.
Let's say Amram, Yitzhak, Hebron, and Uziel.
Look at me now. What is the first one's name?
Amram.
What do we know about him, Ariel? Look at me, Ariel. Amram.
That's Moshe's father.
Beautiful. Very nice. That's the father of Moshe. Does anyone remember Amram's wife's name? Yocheved. Very good. So here we have 4 brothers, 4 sons of Kehat, Amram, Yitzhar, Hebron, Uziel. Who's going to be the rebel? From which family? Later on in the Chumash Bamidbar?
From it's from Kahat.
Korach is son of Uzi.
We're talking about, right, the name of the rebel is who? Korach. And he's the son of which brother here? Vayikach Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kehat ben Levi. So Yitzhar. Today, one of the 3 staple products that the Torah says we must take out. Maybe I think you were learning this in Shur the other day. Take out Trumot and Masrot. What are the 3 staple products that grow in the land of Israel that we would take out the tithings? Trumot and Masrot. Wheat.
Barley.
Let's say grains.
Grain.
Olives.
Shemen from the olives, and not Coca-Cola. What is that called? Yain. Right, very good. We're talking about grapes. In Parshat Korach, after the chapter of the rebels, when he's taking a difference against the Kohanim, right? After there, the Torah tells us, or teaches us, the tithings. In Bamidbar chapter 16 or 17, I forgot. And there we learn about the Trumot and Ma'asrot, which some of them go to the Kohen, some go to the Masrot to Levi. And there we learn that Yitzhar is oil. Yitzhar, it's mentioned here, is oil. The land of Israel produces top olive trees, and we produce great olive oil, called in Hebrew, Shemen Zayit. And it's Yitzhar. And even in the Shomron, overlooking Shechem, we have a yeshuv there called Yitzhar. Benafat Shomron. Okay, before I go on, your question, sir?
Can a ger go to have a pidyon ben?
Why not?
Oh, it's mutar from?
No. Yes, meaning the child of his wife.
No, I mean...
No, it has to be born to a Jewish mother, that it's the opening of the womb. That's correct. Okay, gentlemen, Merari, Moshe, what's the names of the Merari's kids? I'm hanging on.
Machli and Mushi.
Mushi, huh? Would you call your kid Mushi? I don't know.
I used to be called Moishi.
I don't think. Okay, gentlemen, please tell me the amount of the family of Gershon. No, the total amount of all the children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, the entire families of Gershon are 7,500. Excellent. And please tell me the amount of kids to the entire family of Kehat. 8,600. Which pasuk does it state? 8,600?
28.
No, in Hebrew? Kaf Chet. Shmonat Alefim v'Sheish. Excellent. And would you please tell me how many are the kids of
6,000.
Merari? Which pasuk? Lamed Dalet Sheshet Alafim U'Matayim. Look at me. What was the smallest tribe of Israel we saw yesterday? Menachem was 32,000, right? They were the smallest in number. At what age do we count the Menachem? From what age? 20. And we're counting these Levim families from what age?
1.
And what's their number?
22,000.
Just a little less?
Very much less.
So what's bothering you?
Why are there so much less? If there should hypothetically be a lot more, because we're counting even the babies.
Beautiful. We would have thought, one second before we get to Ariel's answer, we would have thought that if you're counting them from 30 days, they're probably going to be how many times more than all the other tribes?
Maybe 1 or 2.
1 or 2?
Or 2 or 3 times.
How many times?
3. Well, you'd have an extra
3 times.
Yeah,
extra generation.
just a generation.
That's what you're saying. So it should be 3 times. A minimum, there should be 90,000, and there are only 8,000? Excellent question. You're directing your minds to what the Rishonim are asking. Ariel, what have you studied?
The Levites lived by themselves, right? In Mitzrayim. They lived separate from all the other tribes and from the Egyptians. Obviously, they're going to populate less.
Explain why.
Even if they're all together, it's a small tribe to begin with. They start out small. They're going to grow a lot slower.
No, but aren't families going to have the same
Birth rate.
Have the same birth rate? Why?
No.
Why?
All the other tribes are living together, and with the Egyptians too.
He's close. Ariel's getting close.
They cannot mix between the other.
Okay,
No, it's the miraculous.
I guess it's
What? Go ahead, Matanya. What?
Because the other tribes were suffering in Egypt, so Hashem made them miraculous.
Is that what you want to say, Yishai?
I was gonna say it says that in Egypt they got bigger, but if they weren't in Egypt, maybe they didn't get.
No, but they were in Egypt. Everyone's in Egypt. We don't have. No one has a visa to be living in Ethiopia now or in India. Listen to the following pasuk. I think this is what you're reflecting, Matanya. Very nice. Quote: Kasher ya'anu oto, ken yirbeh, v'chen yifrot. I'll repeat. Kasher ya'anu oto, as they afflicted him, ken yirbeh, v'chen yifrot. So too will they grow and multiply. Who was afflicted in Mitzrayim?
Except Levim.
Who was afflicted?
Yeah.
What?
The rest of the Israel.
All of the upcoming nation of Israel were afflicted in slavery. And what was the idea of the Egyptian administration? What were they? Why were they afflicting us? To what?
To stop the population.
Right. By when you're dead tired, you can't have relations with your wife and bring children into the world. They're working overtime. Is the pay good? No pay whatsoever. We're eating straw, right? Back-breaking work. Years and decades. And what's happening? We're growing. I told you the stroller business went booming there, and we bought out all of the strollers in Mitzrayim. I'm saying, of course, humoristically. So 1 second, Hirsch. So the situation is, Kasher they're afflicted. How do we know or see in the Chumash that the Leviim were really not afflicted in bondage? How do we see that? Can you spot something in the Torah that would suggest that they had mobility, free access, they're not taking off from work?
Bro, I don't really understand the question.
I want to try to prove from the Chumash. Mm-hmm. It's all nice that we're learning outside. I want you guys to know text. I want you to know Chumash. Can you suggest a proof from the Chumash that could suggest that the Leviim were free to work free to go here and travel there, and they were not under this bondage and hard servitude. Who is summoned time and time again and went to Paro whenever he wanted to? Moshe. Aaron escorted him, and Moshe and Aaron are children from you said Amram. They're Levium. How can they be going anytime and every time? Aren't they at work? Aren't they in bondage?
So they're not.
So this can support the idea that we're trying to say. Certainly the Ramban, Nachmanides, this is one of three explanations that will explain the low population rate. In other words, a natural population rate, according to this meaning, was to the tribe of Levi. They didn't have the supernatural population rate. That went to everyone else that was in bondage. Because God promised the function or the amount that you're going to be afflicted, the more you're going to grow. The opposite of what they wanted. I want to share something interesting with you. When the first Intifada, the Arab uprising, happened here in Israel, and there was a lot of stress. Okay, and they started first throwing 1987. That's when I got my guns license, I remember. When they started throwing, not elite chocolate bars or Hershey chocolate bars at us, but they were throwing stones. I don't know if you realize when you're driving 40, 50, 60, or 70 kilometers an hour, and someone throws a stone at you.
It's as if the stone is coming at you at 40 or 50 kilometers an hour.
You get hit, you die.
How can you die?
You got a
Concussion.
Concussion, what else?
Car crashes.
What?
Car crashes. You lose control.
You lose control. Do you know how many times Arab terrorists threw stones at my car? And they're aiming for me. How many times I spent in the Ramallah police station filling out forms in order to get the government to replace my windows without me taking it out of my pocket. So then, and the army or the government decided to treat the matter almost with those meshy gloves. What are those gloves, those soft gloves called? I forgot.
Silk gloves.
Silk gloves. Really, we didn't act as a deterrent. And then they stepped up. Then it was Molotov cocktails, right? And then it was shooting. How many funerals I went to of people that I knew, of friends that I knew, and so on and so forth. And then there was a lot of government pressure against our towns in Judea and Samaria and the Gaza Strip. And they wanted to freeze us. And some put up the following sign. You're not going to scare us. The Arabs aren't going to scare us, nor the government. The more we're going to be afflicted, the war is going to grow. Do you know what happened to the population in Judea and Samaria in the years of the first Intifada? More people joined, more families grew and grew and grew. There was a blessing from Hashem, mamash. And they put up this political sign. They call it, we're a political settlement. The more we're going to be afflicted, the more we're going to grow. No one's going to... And it happened. And today there are 500,000 Jews living in Judea and Samaria. Here, God gave us going through some weak times of Jewish identification, national understanding, who we are, how we really belong here. And without Hashem, we're going to be working in the education field, raising families, educating our children, to be pioneers, to be faithful to the missions of our national comeback and return to the land of Israel. And that's going to lead the Jewish people. Never ever were the idealistic people the majority of the population. Never ever, in all periods of times. You see, 2 of the 12 spies that only spoke good about the land of Israel, they were the leaders. The 10 great Gedolim flunked. Hashmonaic times as well. The pioneers and the idealistic people were always the few. So we're not influenced whatsoever that there are majorities. They're not even majorities. Most of the nation today has national sentiments. Most of the Hebrew nation today in Israel is more aligned to the return of the land of Israel, respecting the tradition of the Jewish people. It's just that there's a clique, small cliques of very far left-wing people that are running the judicial system, the Department of Communication, and so on and so forth. We have to be careful not to be brainwashed. And the Jewish people are not stupid. They're not brainwashed by all these things. Let's get back to the Pasuk here, the Torah. Mr. Hirsch is asking a question.
So, for the Pidyon on the Ben, the mother cannot have had a miscarriage.
That's right.
Does an abortion also?
God forbid.
Nor an abortion as well.
Of course.
And it has to be 5 silver shekels?
That's right.
5.
But that's not the time. We're not
31st day?
No, I'm not dealing anymore. You can ask me after sure. We're back here. So, gentlemen, you've all noticed 3 families with such low numbers. Explanation number 1, Ramban. We just said the population growth was the function of the suffering, the affliction. Remember, that's number 1. Number two, the Netziv of Volozhin. Okay, Naftali Tzvi Berlin, the student, a chain of students from the Vilna Gaon. Okay, Avram Yitzchak Cohen Cook was a colleague of him. Today, by the way, a grandnephew, a nephew of Rav Cook passed away. The chief rabbi of Rehovot, Rav Simcha Cohen Cook, passed away at the age of 92 years old. He's a great scholar. He was Rav Cook's brother's son, died at the age of 92. The Netziv of Volozhin says, based upon the pasuk in Tehillim, Sviva nis'ara me'od. Whoever is closer to God, you better watch out. Zbang. The closer you are to God, the greater is expected of you. The greater is expected of you if you just deviate 1 millimeter. What point is this? Punishment was more prevalent to the Leviim more than the rest of the tribes. And why? A function of their holiness, their greatness. From the outset, Levi was very unique, very holy, very special, the son of Yakov Avinu. He was destined even. And therefore, during the years, if they deviated just a little, boom. And that will explain why they have such a low population. Not low birth rate. They could have had a high birth rate. Rather, many, many died. A third explanation, I don't know if it's the Maharal, but the Maharal says the same idea in other matters. Listen to this. My friend registered in studying Machon Meir, and he registered for 1 month. He thought, I can learn Torah in 1 month. I'll be a scholar. I'll encompass all the Mishnah, the Chamisha Chumshei Torah, the Nevi'im, Shulchan Aruch, Mishnah Berurah, Mesilat Yesharim. I'll do that all the month. At the end of the month, he was bewildered. He says, I haven't finished 1/100,000th of what I wanted to study. I sat him down, and I said, my dear friends, whatever belongs to the spiritual world takes longer to accomplish, takes longer to come into fruition, takes longer to become bashel, ripe. Just like Adam HaRishon was only created at the 6th day of creation. All the physical, material matters were created in the first 5 days. Something, though, that's spiritual in nature is purposely brought into the world later in the duration of the days of creation, because whatever is belonging to the spiritual world takes longer to reach its ultimate objective. That's the world. You can buy a lottery ticket and win 100,000 shekels or 1,000,000 shekels. You can go to an instant hamburger place and get instant hamburgers, instant coffee. There are a lot of things that are related to the material world that are quick, instant. But what's related to the spiritual world takes even longer to develop. The tribe of Levi, indeed, is a very holy, spiritual tribe. Their makeup, their spiritual DNA, their spiritual makeup is by far higher, more noble than all the other tribes. And therefore, their population number, even from the age of 1 month, 30 days old, is so low because the tribe of Levi takes a longer time to reach its ultimate objective, its ultimate spiritual objective. That the explanation, I think, is by the Maharal of Prague. I just want to go further, gentlemen. What did I want to see? Ken, did you notice in all of the countings we have here, what is always the last digit?
It starts with the
The last digit of all the countings. 0. The unit digit is 0. Am I making a mistake? Did you notice that as well? That every counting we have, Yisrael, the Leviim, everything ends with the tens, with the, what is it called? Not the tens. The units is all 0. Isn't that interesting? Only when we get to the next counting, we count the Bechorot. The counting of the Bechorot, can you please find it? And tell me the dear number of the Bechorim. Which pasuk are you citing? Please cite a pasuk so we can all find it.
Mem
Gimel.
22,273.
Is that true? Is that right?
That is.
Vayichol, let's read it together. Pasuk Mem Gimel, the last pasuk of this section. Vayichol Bechor Zachar, b'mispar shemot mi ben chodesh v'mal lifkudehem, shenayim ve'esrim elef, shlosha v'shivim u'matayim. 22,273. Why? There are really those that want to suggest that it was supernatural. All the tribes, including the Leviim, their numbers were indeed, genuinely, authentically, multiples of 100 without any unit digit number whatsoever. But only when we come to the Bechorim is there a units digit, in this case, the number 3, where there are others that say, no. When the countings would be done in groups of 10. And they would, what is it called? Round it off? Is that the term that's used? They would round off the numbers in units of 10. They wouldn't give you the specific numbers. But in the countings of the Bechorim, they would not do so. And the question is, why? And the answer is the following. Yes, sir?
22,273 is a prime number, which means that it has no factors.
This is not a mathematical class. What do I care if it's a prime number or not? What do I care?
I ask you, is there significance?
Now I understand. I don't see it. I don't know.
Because previously, all these numbers were so obviously multiples of other numbers.
Interesting.
Now we have a number that isn't a multiple.
This is a typical Moshe Wiederman excellent question that only he can think of in less than a second or two and express it.
A stupid question.
No, I'm not. I respect what you're saying, and I don't know. I've never heard this answer. One of the great Achron, the Meshech Chochmah, we used him last week as well, Machon Meir of Devinsk, he says the following. Remember, and we opened up about 20 minutes ago, there's going to be a pidyon, an exchange, between who and who? Okay. What are we taking out from who? Kedusha from the Bechorim. And it'll be inserted in the Leviim. Now, you just can't take approximately, what number did you say? 22,270 Leviim. No, you can't round it off and say, how many Bechorim are there that need the Kedusha to be taken out? 22,270. Why not? What about the other 3? You have to be precise and exact. Take that out and exchange it to the Israelim. And therefore, that's what the Or Sameach says here, that was the exchange process.
So will this mean,
yes.
The Bechorim are from 30 months and above? Because they have to be specific on how many Bechorim.
All the Bechorim counted here absolutely are from 30 days and up. Okay. So there's an equal counting. The Leviim and the Bechorim were equally counted from the day of 30 and up. As opposed to the Minyan of Am Yisrael, they were all counted from 20 years old. We gave several explanations at the beginning of the week. One of them was the strategic reason, in order to prepare for war, since in 20 days, we're going to be motioning and moving for the first time. Yes, sir.
Doesn't explain why, if there was this equal amount of Levites and Israelite firstborns, which is probably NS, it doesn't explain why you have to be on them.
No, but did you see, what was the sub? Let's answer Matanya's question. What is the sub number of Leviim, gentlemen?
If only there was an excess amount.
Tell me, what is the sum number of all the Leviim?
8,600.
No. Sum of all the 3 families.
22,300.
Please cite the pasuk.
Or 22,000.
Please cite the pasuk.
39.
Okay, let's read it. Lamitet. Let's read it together. Lamitet 39. Kol pikudei halvim. Let's read it. Asher pakad Moshe ve'Aharon. Some say that Aaron, they have dots on it to tell him that he was not. I repeat, he was not amongst the counting. The dots on top of, you have dots on top of your, so the Sofer as well will put some dots on top of the name of Aaron. He was not counted. We'll get to that in maybe another matter. But let's get to the sum total. Pi Hashem b'li mishpechotam, kol zachar mi ben chodesh v'mala, shenayim v'esrim aleph. Okay, gentlemen, here are two scales, my right hand and my left hand. How many Bechorim are there? 22?
300 extra.
No, not the Cholim. There's how many Levites?
Well, let's start with the Bechorim. How many Bechorim are there? 22,273. Didn't we say that? 22,273. How many Leviim are there?
22,300.
No, how many Leviim are there? 22,000. Where is there an excess number? How many? 273. Now, let's just for argument's sake, Liav and Hirsch. Okay? You are a Bechor, you are a Levi, I take it out of you, and now the pidyon is made, the Kedusha goes here.
You said Nelef, right?
22,000. 22,273.
This word, Nelef.
Okay. Which word?
Nelef, before
Nefel from the word Nefel, right. Now, I finished the first two, here, all you on this side are all Bechorim. I finished the first 22,000. Who's sitting opposite you? 22,000 Leviim. Uh-oh. What problem do I have in front of me?
The remaining 200.
Excellent. I have a remaining 273 what? Bechorim. And I don't have to whom exchange. Can you make a quick internet order? Can you please send over 273 Leviim? No, there's no such thing. So they're going to pay. They're going to pay. Chamesh shkalim kesef. Where do we see that? Let's go to, please, the last section of this dear chapter. I'm reading Pasuk Mem Vav 46. Please follow. Ve'et piduyah shlosha v'shavim v'matayim. The 273 ha'odefim odef above and beyond lehadif to prefer. You see the word? I'm reading Mem Vav 46. Follow. Ha'otfim al Levim, those 273, in addition to the Levim, Mibchor B'nai Israel, what are you going to do? V'lekachta, you're going to take chameshet shkalim lagugol. 5. Every person will give 5 silvers. B'shekel HaKodesh tikach, which is worth esrim gerah shakel. V'natata kesef, these monies will be pidyon monies. You're going to give them to li'aron ulvanav. They're going to be supporting the important entity, institution called the kahuna. Piduyei otfim b'hem. So now we see we have a solution. God gives a solution. 22,000 Bechorim are exchanged their Kedusha to 22,000 Leviim. We have 273 hot Bechorim that are almost going to be a little nervous and pressure. How are we going to get the Kedusha out? Tan taran. Kadosh Baruch Hu thought about this in advance, thank you. And he says, after you finish the 22,000, 273, randomly, whoever's left over, each one will pay. And this will remind us of what Hirsch mentioned. The payment, the Kedusha will come out of the Bechor. It'll go into the monies that are now being paid to the Aaron and Banav. This is just exactly, it seems to be almost precise, just like the actual ceremony of the Pidyon HaBechor, right? You're the father of a Bechor. You want to take out the Kedusha of the infant, and by paying the 5 silvers, as the Torah dictates in Shemot chapter 13, you are now exchanging the Kedusha from the body to the monies. We see this happening in other matters also in our Torah lives. For instance, let's take you, Liav, your Mercedes-Benz truck was in the shop, in the garage, and you've now picked a lot of your fruits, and these fruits are called the saplings of the 4th year, commonly called in Hebrew, Neta Revai. Please repeat. Neta Revai. Okay, 4th year plantings. The Torah dictates that 4th year plantings, what must be done with the fruits? No. What?
You have to bring it to the Yerushalayim.
Very good. It has Kedushat Yerushalayim. It has the sanctity of Yerushalayim. It's equal to the laws called Maaser Sheni. right? In the first, second, fourth, and fifth years of the 7-year cycle. We have another tithe after taking out Truma, Maser Rishon. We have a second tenth called Maser Shini. It's for you. You take it up Yerushalayim. You check in a hotel. You come learn Torah Machon Meir. You eat all these food products in Yerushalayim because God wants you to be there. As the Torah says in Devarim, quote, Leman tilmad liyirat Hashem Elokecha. God wants you to study Yirat Shamayim. Yirat Shamayim is not an internet. Yirat Shamayim is not just studying yourself. It's coming to Yerushalayim. Coming to scholars, Rabbanim, Talmidei Chachamim, Tzadikim. That's absorbing the atmosphere of what's really Yirat Shamayim. There are levels, of course, infinite levels of Yirat Shamayim. So, Maser Sheni is equal to Neta Ravai. So we see there, let's get back to your truck, right? It's in the garage. He doesn't have a truck that can bring these hundreds of kilos of products to Yerushalayim. What does he do? He takes a coin, thank you, and he does a Pidyon, excellent. He transfers the Kedusha from the onto. He gets on an Egged bus, and with these monies, he buys food products in Yerushalayim. We'll continue this year another time. Shalom, be well.